Hello, YouTube. It's Road to Recovery, and today I'm going to be talking about the circles that are used by a lot of different 12-step organizations mitigate and manage all of the triggering events that might be in your life due to your addiction. So today I specifically want to focus in on the middle circle because the middle circle is where all the magic happens and it's also where all the problems happen. So without further ado, let's just take a look at the middle circle and are you taking them seriously? So what I'm showing you here is an example of what one specific addict might use. So you can see that there's an outer circle, a middle circle, and an inner circle. And so the outer circle is usually reserved for all of those behaviors that are okay to do that we don't have to really manage or stay on top of too much. The middle circle is where we have sometimes the problematic stuff, the things that might lead to triggering events that could get us into the inner circle. And in your case, for the people who follow my channel, it's usually pornography, but it could be a series of other things. All the things that you see here on this circle list are just examples. So they are the example of one addict putting their things down. Your circle may look completely differently. So despite what you see here, don't think that this is what the way your circle should look. So when we talk about the three circles, the three circles represent a layer of addiction and recovery. So all of these things talk about things that you do and things that you shouldn't be doing and things that you should really stay on top of. And it's that middle area that's the most important that we're going to be focusing on today. The outer circle behaviors promote recovery. So this can be things like working out, things that are like meetings, sponsorship, family time, staying connected with hobbies, step work, spirituality, community time, whatever those things are, writing, playing instruments, you name it. If it's not affecting your addiction, it's okay to do it. The inner circle behaviors are the ones that you specifically shouldn't be doing because of your addiction. So for most of us, this is going to be pornography. Sometimes it could also be other things. If you're a gaming addict, maybe you have gaming. If it's gambling, it's gambling. Related to pornography, sometimes you just can't watch, R or X-rated movies. So that list could be iterative and things that you're staying on top of, but they're definitely leading to you acting out. And the middle circle behaviors are actions, desires, or behaviors that may lead to a slip or risky event. And those things can be having a really emotional day, whether you're hiding a specific activity that you're trying to do or you're trying to isolate, you justifying specific behaviors. And so when we look back at the prior tab, you can see some of the example middle circle events. Somebody listed visiting family. Why is that a specific event? Because there's probably lots of triggers in being with that specific family member. Working too much, I think, is actually an excellent one. Some people will work their tails off, and that leads to compulsive activity. Being hungry, and we'll talk about this later, but something basic as being hungry can lead to triggering. Staying on the computer too long. You know what? I work on the computer all day and I have to watch that myself. I force myself to take breaks. And then we have objectifying, which I think is also a really good one. When you catch yourself objectifying another person, it's really good to stay on top of that. In other words, you have to, acknowledge that this is something that may lead to you going to pornography. Okay, when we talk about, the slippery slope of the middle circle, what are we talking about? Middle circles should be actively treated with caution, right? So the entire purpose of this video is to make you aware of the fact that once you've labeled something as a middle circle activity, you got to stay on top of that thing, man. I mean, it's not playing around because if you stop or you start not acknowledging the fact that this is a problematic behavior for you, what's going to happen? You're going to start acting out, right? You're going to fall down that slippery slope. You'll be triggered. You'll get a craving. So all these middle circle activities are something you have to proactively stay on top of. Things you should be thinking about are should you even be engaging in this behavior? I know this sounds pretty self-explanatory, but sometimes those things that are in the middle circle we can't avoid. They might be job related. They might be visiting to family. Sometimes you can't get out of family obligations. But it's always important to ask yourself, is this something that I can actually get around or can I do something else in its place? And sometimes you do have other options. Maybe you haven't really thought that out yet. What is the plan if triggering should happen? Again, you're in that middle circle. If you're in that middle circle with any specific event, right away you should have some sort of plan, some sort of game plan if you should be triggered. If you get triggered, what are you going to do? Are you going to call your sponsor? Are you going to use CBT tactics? There's lots of CBT tactics that are out there, and I've gone over them in other videos. But have a game plan. Know what you should be doing if you should get triggered. Do I have any coping strategies in place? Lots of coping strategies that are out there. I've talked about a few of them in my video, but if you can sit here and tell me that you didn't have any coping strategies in place, I'm going to say, well, what were you doing this whole time? You knew that this was going to be a dangerous activity and didn't plan for it. Can you call somebody in the event that you are going to be triggered or that you even suspect that triggering may happen? So if you're in a middle circle area, have an accountability partner. Have somebody that you can call on already to just let them know that, hey, you know what? I might be in a difficult situation. I just want to let you know I'm walking into this position. And what happens as a result of that? Accountability, right? So you call the person before you're about to engage in that, and then you call them afterwards, let them know, hey, I got through this. And the last thing, am I actively monitoring myself in response to these events? So anytime that you're inside of that middle circle, regardless of what the thing is, you should be on top of it. How are you feeling right now? Are you adding or removing events as you see them as being middle circle events? Are you actively seeing what happens as a result of you getting through that event? So even if you successfully get through a middle circle event, you should think about what you just did and what worked and maybe what didn't work, but always staying on top of those things. Now, some tips that should be obvious about this is developing contingency plans. Every single time you go into a middle circle event, you should think about the entry and exit and what it's going to entail. Visualize how you're going to be executing that thing, which also involves planning, and we'll get to that in a bit. Keep recovery partners in the loop. If you have a sponsor, so be it, call your sponsor. If you don't have a sponsor, whatever you have, you can just have an accountability partner. That's good enough. Reach out to those people. Let them know that you're getting into a rough area and that you just need to talk to somebody. Always have coping tactics on the ready. And so this is something you should be doing even when you're not inside of your middle circle. Always be working on what are the things I'm going to do should I be triggered. That should always be in your mind. You should always know what the thing is that you're supposed to do when you get into that triggering event before the craving starts kicking in, and even when the craving starts kicking in. Because if you don't have an answer for that, what are you supposed to do in the event you're just going to let yourself slide back into addiction again? No, stay on top of that. Have a plan. Always staying on top of your emotional state is a really problematic thing for a lot of men, especially because we'll fly into the fit of anger, depression, rage, what have you. And we're inside of that emotional state before we realize we're caught up inside of it. So you're more prone to acting out when you're inside of that emotional state. Well, if you're mindful about that emotional state as you're starting to slide into it, that's when you can start using other coping mechanisms to kind of keep yourself pulled back, kind of realize that you're sliding into a difficult situation that might put you at risk. Staying mindful about your emotional state is critical to staying sober. And finally, HALT. This is used in lots of different 12-step programs. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you're in any one of those states, just recognizing that you're in that state can help you anticipate whether you might be vulnerable or not. And if you're vulnerable, you might get triggered. If you're triggered, you might get the craving. And if you get the craving, you might act out, right? So if you're hungry, go eat a sandwich. I know this sounds pretty basic, but it's also being mindful of the fact, oh, I'm hungry right now. I am angry right now. That guy just pissed me off. Man, I've got nothing going on right now. God, I feel tired, right? If you're saying all of those things, and you probably said all of those things right now or during this day, maybe even during this video, if you're feeling that way, acknowledge the fact that those things are striking you right now, and then take action on it. Don't just sit there. And if you are just sitting there, sometimes that's okay if you're applying mindfulness tactics to make sure that you can pay attention to your emotional state and make sure that this is a difficult time for you. Finally, defining your objectives is super critical. Defining your objectives holds hands with actually making a plan. So when you define your objectives, you know what you have to do. And the second thing you should do, make a plan for how you're going to execute it and stick to it. Always plan, plan, plan. Don't fly by the seat of your pants, because if you're flying by the seat of your pants might fall down. Always have that plan, fellas. You've got to stick to what you're going to do, visualize what you're going to, or how you're going to accomplish those objectives, and maybe even write it down. If you don't write it down, that's fine, as long as you've got the idea for how you're going to execute. Always stick to the game plan and don't veer off. And if you do veer off, make sure that you've revitalized your game plan. Like, okay, here's now what I'm going to do. Being purposeful, being mindful in all of your objectives will save you from most of your inner circle behaviors as long as you stick to the plan. All right, thanks a lot. I appreciate you joining in. Take care and stay on that road to recovery.